Good evening, it's 9 o'clock. If you're just joining us, the breaking news tonight is that airlines around the world are warning of delays and cancellations because of a software issue affecting thousands of Airbus planes. The manufacturer says solar radiation may corrupt data critical to the functioning of flight controls on the A320 family of aircraft, and affected planes will need to be updated. A short time ago, I spoke to Tim Johnson, Policy Director at the Civil Aviation Authority.
So the European aviation regulator earlier this evening announced a requirement for some urgent maintenance, some precautionary but urgent maintenance on the Airbus A320 aircraft. Worth adding that it's not all of the A320 aircraft, it's just some of the variants with a particular configuration of them. And it's asked airlines to make sure this maintenance, this precautionary maintenance is done as soon as possible.
Why was it identified at this moment in time to ground the aircraft? What has precipitated this?
Well, I think Airbus identified a particular potential issue with this software system and raised the issue with the aviation regulator in Europe, and that prompted them to take this precautionary action and ask airlines to undertake this maintenance as soon as possible.
So what I'm getting at really is whether the issue was only identified today.
I think it's only recently come to light. I think we see manufacturers all over the world actually being very prompt at identifying, if issues emerge, and then they raise them and sort of talk to their regulators and make sure action is taken. So we know this has come to light recently, and it's been escalated quickly, and that's why we've seen the European regulator issue this requirement earlier on this evening.
And in your estimation, is this a serious incident? Should people be worried? I mean, travelling passengers, should they be worried?
Well, aviation is one of the safest forms of transport available to people, and I think there should be a high degree of kind of confidence in the aviation sector. This is precautionary, a precautionary approach, and airlines. We've been speaking to the airlines, particularly the UK airlines, this afternoon, and they're already well into their planning for implementing these changes over the coming days. We're aware. Not all UK airlines fly this particular variant, so not everyone will be affected. There may be some airlines with some impact over the coming days. So our advice to consumers is very much check your airline website, check your airline app, and that's the best way of finding out whether or not your flights are disrupted. And if they are, either kind of delayed or cancelled, then the CAA's website, that's caa.co.uk, has got information about what your rights are in that circumstance.
And can you give any estimation as to how long this software change or update will actually take to implement?
Well, the airlines are working through their plans for this maintenance as we speak, but I think based on what we know so far, we're expecting, for the vast majority of aircraft, a matter of days. Is what we understand from the airlines at this moment.
Right, which could take us into the beginning of December, and we were speaking to our travel expert Simon Calder, which is an incredibly busy time for travel. So the disruption could be immense, couldn't it?
Well, it's we're not quite into the sort of full Christmas period yet. We know the airlines are very focused on making those changes, so it is possible there will be some disruption, and the airlines will be sort of communicating either through their website or through their apps with their passengers. So we sort of encourage those who are due to be travelling over the next few days to really kind of use those, use the website and the app to kind of get the very latest information.
Yes, we know that British Airways only has 3 of this aircraft, but what are the other airlines that will be affected, so people can know?
So there are a number of UK operators that fly, so sort of EasyJet, Jet2, Wizz, probably the larger of the operators that fly. But we sort of again it's not all of their aircraft, so we sort of encourage your viewers who may be travelling in the coming days to kind of check that website and check that app.
And just to reiterate what you said at the beginning of the interview, it is a precautionary measure that's being taken.
That's correct. Airbus identified this as a a potential issue and have acted on a precautionary basis to make sure that the software is changed over the kind of coming days. Aviation remains one of the safest forms of transport. So I think we'd expect to see the airlines, as they are doing, respond very promptly and quickly to this.
And for viewers, could you explain the source of the problem? What exactly is the issue?
I think Airbus identified that there is a potential for some software challenges in relating to solar flares in a very specific set of circumstances. So that's what they've identified. They spoke to the regulator about it, and the maintenance, this precautionary maintenance that will be put in place over the kind of coming days will address that issue.
And it is only some of the global Airbus 320 aircraft fleet, is that correct?
That's right. There are a number of different variants: the 319, the 320, the 321, and it's only a certain number of those aircraft with a particular software configuration on them. So you're right. The A320 is a global fleet, flown in many parts of the world, but it's only a subset of that the fleet that requires this precautionary maintenance.
Yes, and you did say that it could take a number of days, but can you predict when things will be completely back to normal, 100%?
I can't put a precise estimate on that. We know that the airlines are sort of aware of the issue. They're working through the operational planning, and our expectation at the moment is it's likely to be a matter of days at this point. The airlines will be communicating directly with kind of passengers in the event of a disruption through that period.
What would you say to passengers who might now have lost some confidence in Airbus 320?
Say that aviation is a very safe form of travel. The sector invests a lot in being able to kind of fly the population to all sorts of kind of parts of the world in a safe manner. Absolutely, this is a bit of precautionary maintenance that Airbus have identified, and they've acted promptly, got this requirement in place, and the airlines will be responding very quickly to it.
Joining us now is travel journalist Simon Calder. Welcome to you once again. We just heard there the end of Tim Johnson saying that aviation is extremely safe, but can you understand how this might spook some travellers?
I very much hope it doesn't. I mean, aviation safety is built upon investigating incidents and learning from them. And generally, with any incident involving aviation, there will be features about it which simply haven't been identified before. And the fact that we're talking now just about 4 weeks after the aircraft that was involved in the incident which led to this directive being issued late on a Friday night just shows that the Federal Aviation Administration, Airbus themselves, have been going into this trying to figure out what caused JetBlue aircraft suddenly to lose altitude and what needs to be done about it. And they pinned it on intense solar radiation, a solar flare affecting a particular piece of equipment, and as a result of that, those updates are going in around the world as we speak. And I wouldn't say that I'm clearly very sympathetic to anybody who's nervous about flying. But honestly, if you thought, oh, I'm booked to fly from Glasgow to London tomorrow, I think I'll drive instead, you would be magnifying your risk by a huge amount. Aviation is absolutely safety obsessed, which is why we've seen this particular course of action tonight. They could have just said, oh, well, when you get round to it, have a look at this. And indeed, for some minor faults, they will generally say, when you're next doing some serious work on your aircraft, then put this in place. But if it's believed to be potentially flight critical in some really extreme circumstances, they will act immediately.
Simon, can you explain what happened in the incident that took place 4 weeks ago that has brought us to this point where A320, some of the family of A320 aircraft, will have to be grounded until there is a software update?
Yeah, this was on the US airline JetBlue, which has a mainly Airbus fleet, and it was a routine flight from Cancun in Mexico going to Newark in New Jersey. It was flying over Florida, I believe, when they it suddenly lost altitude. And that was because a piece of equipment that controls the elevators on the tail, which basically make the point that the nose of the aircraft either point downwards or upwards or stay on the level. Suddenly the aircraft was commanded to descend by ultimately this piece of equipment, a computer known as an ELAC, to descend. Nobody told it to. The aircraft, I understand, was on autopilot at the time. And very sadly, in this incident, 15 people were hurt. It made an emergency landing at Tampa in Florida. I'm glad to say nobody was really seriously hurt, certainly no fatalities with that. But clearly, anything like that happens, suddenly the aircraft does something it shouldn't, there is going to be a serious investigation. The safety authorities, in this case, the FAA of the US, and as well as that, the manufacturer Airbus, they're just going to get on the case and figure out what happened. And as with everything to do with aviation safety, make sure that everybody knows and knows what to do to prevent this particular set of circumstances happening again.
Would it be unreasonable to think then that the aircraft would have been grounded after that incident, which was 4 weeks ago, rather than a month later?
Okay, I can understand that perfectly reasonable question. Look, I've just checked with Airline. They say there are 1,000 Airbus A320s, just the 200 series, in the air at the moment. The aviation depends on things running smoothly, and the airlines and the safety authorities always have to take a proportionate approach. So yes, they will absolutely have been really alerted to this. They will immediately be combing through the records for any similar event. And if they can identify a pattern, then that might happen very quickly. And I'll give you as an example of that, you will recall very sadly the loss of Boeing 737 MAX aircraft in sadly in a year or so. We had the loss of a Lion Air flight in Indonesia, and that was followed by Ethiopian Airlines taking off from Addis Ababa. And both of those incidents led within a few days to the entire fleet of 737 Maxes being grounded around the world, because they realized that there was a pattern. They realized that there was something seriously wrong with that aircraft, and it remained grounded for many, many months while the necessary tests were made and while the updates were made, and now it's flying very safely. So if they had felt there is an unknown fault and we think it is likely to strike again, they would certainly have grounded the aircraft. safety of passengers and crew understandably comes absolutely top of everything. But I think I would say, as a passenger, I'm glad they made this call, which was, let's find out what went wrong. Let's work out what we're going to do and ask the airlines to do that immediately, because that will then hopefully eliminate what was a pretty microscopic risk. But it happened once, it shouldn't happen again, and they have acted upon it.
Simon Calder, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. Thank you. Well, let's bring in our correspondent, Emma Birchley, who's been following this story for us this evening. Emma, bring us up to date with everything that you know thus far.
Well, we're talking about around 6,500 aircraft. So these are part of the Airbus A320 family, actually 3 different models, the A319, the 320 and the 321. But what is being made absolutely clear here is that this is a precautionary measure. It relates to an incident which happened on October the 30th, a JetBlue flight from Cancun in Mexico to Newark in New Jersey suffered a sharp loss of altitude. Now, several people were hurt, and as a result, this incident was analysed, it was investigated, and that's why we've got to the point we are at now. It's been revealed that intense solar radiation may corrupt data critical to the functioning of flight controls. And in most cases, this can be sorted out with a software update that takes 2 to 3 hours. In some cases, there will need to be hardware changes. In that case, it takes longer. But what is being made clear is that this does need to happen. Now, the UK Civil Aviation Authority clearly doesn't want to take any chances and so is making sure that this all happens. It clearly says that UK airlines are being affected. We know that Wizz Air has some flights which are going to be impacted over the weekend. Passengers will be notified and the work has already been scheduled and no significant disruption expected. Aer Lingus has a limited number of flights that are impacted and they've taken immediate steps to sort that out. Some disruption too for EasyJet aircraft. They're going to inform customers directly and are doing everything they can to minimise disruption. And BA, we've heard from now, they only have 3 aircraft and actually they'll all be sorted overnight. So that's the picture with airlines operating out of the UK. But this is a global issue. We know that Colombian airline Avianca actually have closed ticket sales for 10 days and Air India also warning of delays. But the message really that passengers should check with their airline.
Thank you very much for that update. Let's bring in our US correspondent, David Blevins, now. And David, this perhaps affecting American airlines more so than those domestically for us.
Yes, and it couldn't come at a worse moment because Thanksgiving, which fell just yesterday, is the busiest travel holiday of the year in the United States. Some 6 million people scheduled to travel by air over a few short days. Now, we know this problem arose on that JetBlue flight, as Emma's been explaining, from Cancun, Mexico to Newark in New Jersey. But the airline most affected on this side of the Atlantic is American. They have 480 Airbus 320s in their fleet. And while they say none of them has experienced the same issue, they have grounded 340 of them to carry out some replacement to the software. Now, they're very keen to stress that in anticipation of the order to ground, they had begun to carry out this work. They describe it as an all-hands-on-deck exercise in terms of the technical work and in terms of how they are handling passengers on the ground. They insist it will only take 2 to 3 hours to complete on each airplane, and therefore they don't anticipate much disruption. Nonetheless, of course, they say their priority is the safety for all passengers, and that's what they're focused on right now. I say American is the airline most affected. In the last few minutes, we've also had a statement from Delta, who are telling us that a small portion of their Airbus A320 family fleet is affected, fewer than 50 of them. I'll just read that very briefly for you. Delta expects this to apply to a small portion of our Airbus A320 family fleet, specifically less than 50 A321 neo aircraft. Delta Tech Ops experts will implement a programme for our aviation maintenance technicians to complete the work we expect to be described in the directive by Saturday morning. So within the space of just a few hours, they expect to finish this work through already planned aircraft maintenance touch points. I think it is worth just stressing again that America is, of course, the world's largest aviation market. Some 900 people are transported by American airlines at home and abroad over the course of any year. And there has been some concern about aviation safety, particularly over the course of the last 12 months. And I think this will only add to those concerned about the safety of America's skies.
David, thank you so much for that update from the American perspective. We're joined now by former Airbus A330 pilot and senior lecturer in aviation operations at Buckinghamshire University's Marco Chan. Thank you very much for speaking to us. Can you give us a little bit of the history of the A320?
Yeah, it's been around for quite some time. It's been, I wouldn't call it a new technology, so to speak. We've got newer Airbus A350, for example. We've got a Boeing 787. A320 has existed for quite some time. However, having said that, it doesn't mean it's not safe. It's absolutely safe. Regular maintenance inspection. The regulators are always looking at ways to improve the aeroplane. There are newer models, newer engine choices, for example. So in terms of the incident record, it's not been overly alarming at all with this Airbus type versus other type in other manufacturers, for example. So having said that, the incident rate is still very low overall in both manufacturers, I would say.
But the incident on October the 30th, what we understand happened is that the aircraft was commanded to descend, and this wasn't a command from the pilot, and 15 people were hurt. That's quite alarming.
You know, indeed. So I understand where it comes from in terms of the concern for the passengers. It was a computer issue. I think it has been covered quite extensively by other correspondents as well. It was caused by the solar flare. So think of it as a wave being projected onto a computer, which corrupts the data and in turn it damages the hardware as well. So right now, the immediate action is for the airlines, the operators and the maintenance to either update the software or to replace the computer overall.
Well, one of the questions that I posed to a previous interviewee was that why wasn't the decision to ground the Airbus A320 taken immediately after that incident on October the 30th? Can you give us some insight as to why it would take 4 weeks to then ground that particular aircraft?
That is an absolutely valid question from the general public as well, but one that I must stress. First of all, the decisions weren't made just overnight. They had to be thoughtful, and remember that and as soon as an incident happened, it would actually take over a month for the regulators, because they don't act on suspicion. They will have to investigate, they will have to inspect the software, they will have to download the data to analyze. So, for example, the investigators, they will have first to confirm the exact cause of the JetBlue incident to prove that it wasn't just a one-off fault, and identify if the same computer could affect the A320s worldwide, which now it has been determined it would affect some of the A320s with those specific computers or software on board. And at the same time, Airbus would need a verified fix, so they need to test the fix before issuing that directive as well, to be ready so airlines knew exactly what to do, what to replace, and when to do it. And once the problem and the solution were confirmed, the emergency directive was issued immediately, which is why all the operators are now scrambling. And as the other correspondents described, all hands on deck at the moment to minimise the delay for the passengers.
And can we be certain that this is the solution, this change of software or update of software, that is the solution to the problem?
I have complete confidence with the investigators and the regulators when they issue these emergency directives, and it has been narrowed down to that computer's issue. And once it has been replaced and the software is updated, the problem should not exist.
And how long will it take to address the problem? How long will it take to fix? We've heard from American Airlines, they're saying on average a couple of hours for each aircraft.
No, I think that is a very reliable sort of time frame, if you ask me. Now, it of course depends on whether it is a simple software update. Now, mind you, there are scenarios where the computers will have to be replaced completely. But having said that, it would only take several hours per aircraft. Now, it also depends on how many of these mechanics and engineers are there at the disposal to change those computers, to update the software. But like I said, and like the correspondents have communicated as well, I believe it would just be a couple of hours per aircraft maximum, and I believe they're there just to minimise the delay for the passengers.
Yes, and that is the primary concern, the disruption to passengers, but also might it knock confidence in aviation, that passengers will be slightly more nervous flying an A320?
Again, there's very valid questions, especially like other correspondents have pointed out as well. It's been quite a lot of incidents in the last 12 months. But in short, I agree with several correspondents and from regulators' perspective as well. I don't think the passengers should be concerned. What we are seeing right now is actually what I call a textbook example of aviation safety working the way it should. You have the aircraft that remained controllable from the JetBlue incident. The redundancy did the job and it landed safely. The fault was really quickly traced to one of the flight control computers, and the regulators issued an emergency airworthiness directive requiring the affected units to be replaced before carrying passengers again. And that was explicitly said on the directive. And that is the strongest safety action available. So the important message is that the vulnerability has been identified, isolated, and is already being fixed across the global fleet. So modern aviation, I think, it reacts before an accident happens. So this event should really give passengers the confidence, not fear, and because the industry has moved immediately to prevent recurrence.
Marco Chan, thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm joined now by aviation expert Richard Levy. Good evening to you. Your appraisal of what has happened this evening.
Yeah. Good evening in London from Dallas, Texas. I believe that the information I have is pretty reliable. I'm a retired captain from American Airlines, and American Airlines is very avidly working on the computer software update. They've done a lot of the aircraft today. They should be done completely by the whole fleet tomorrow. It's quite a few airplanes. And what happened on the JetBlue aircraft outbound from Cancun, they made the emergency landing in Tampa, Florida, and there were 20 injuries when the airplane pitched over. What controls the pitch of the aircraft is the elevator, among others. You could also say thrust on the engines. And the elevator aileron computer, the elevators, the back of the aircraft controls the pitch, aileron controls the turn, the banking of the airplane. That had a hard, perhaps was affected by solar radiation. And so that's why the Airbus has ordered, EASA and FAA in the United States, Federal Aviation Administration, have ordered the change out of the aileron elevator computers, which, as your guests have already said, takes probably 2 hours. Feel the airplanes can be very safe, and is very safe aircraft. And I do not believe the flying public has a need to worry about this. This will be taken care of.
Regarding that JetBlue flight on the 30th of October, is it inaccurate to say that the pilots lost control of the plane? Because there was an emergency landing and it was a command that the plane read into that wasn't given.
Yes, I would not categorize it as the pilots lost control of the airplane. We do this in training, not the exact same malfunction by any means. It was a rapid pitch over, and they have control again of the ailerons that controls the banking of the turning of the airplane left and right. As far as the pitch, what we can do in the modern transport aircraft is turn off the power to the elevators in the back, and then you may be flying the airplane manually, but you have full control of the aircraft.
And this only affects some of the global Airbus A320 family of aircraft, doesn't it?
That's correct. The 320, 319, 320, 321s, and not the 330 or 340 as far as I've seen at this point.
So we are looking at, and it has been described this evening as a precautionary requirement, this change of software or updating of the software. How large a job is this? We've been told that potentially it could take a couple of hours per aircraft, but we've also been told that it could require the entire software to be changed. What's your prediction?
My prediction at this point with the information that I have is the software update will update the elevator aileron computer. And with this new update, it will not be affected, hopefully, I don't believe it will, by what we call solar radiation, and which affects the aircraft when you're obviously not flying in the clouds. Most of the time we're flying above the clouds and in view of the sun, of course, daytime only, not nighttime. So I believe this is going to be a good fix. It's to be seen, but American Airlines is very confident as the largest operator of the 320 family that this will be the solution. And I believe other major carriers are feeling the same confidence that the software update should solve this issue that the JetBlue aircraft experienced on October 30th.
Can you explain exactly what the solar radiation is, what the function is?
So the solar radiation is from the sun. You have what you've seen pictures, or we've seen pictures of pop-ups out of the sun, solar radiation, and it can affect at times some of our high-frequency communication that we use in long-range international flying, and apparently it can affect this aileron elevator computer on the Airbus. And with the software update, whether there's solar radiation or not, it should be immune from any type of variation, any type of change in the inputs to the electronic flight control systems, mainly the pitch, that's the nose down and the nose up of the Airbus aircraft.
Have you any experience of this type of scenario occurring before, and how was it dealt with then?
No, not with the software change that we're talking about now. I'm a retired captain from American, I mentioned, and I was struck at another airline, and we give a malfunction similar to this where you do not have firm electric control of the elevators in the back of the aircraft, but you can fly the airplane manually. So the airplane is fully under control. In the simulator, we have a malfunction that we give for the pilots. We evaluate their responses, and I've seen nothing but success if you have to revert to a manual motion method of controlling the pitch of the airplane. And the proof of the pudding is that the JetBlue landed successfully and safely at Tampa, Florida, even with this elevator aileron computer failure, or the need for the software upgrade, I should say.
Yeah, but 15 people were hurt in that emergency landing.
That is correct.
Yes, we must just say that. What would you say to members of the public, passengers, potential passengers, about the safety of the A320? Should they be worried?
No, they should not. Aviation is as much as a risk as walking across the street or walking down Fifth Avenue in New York City or to Harrods in London. there's risks in living. But as far as the safety of the Airbus A320 family, 319, 320, 321, I feel the public should have 100% confidence in the aircraft. It's a very well-designed aircraft. And from time to time, every major transport aircraft will have software upgrades of different types to make the airplane resilient to any type of an upset, which is called an upset maneuver. And so I believe the traveling public, as one of your reporters just mentioned, here in the United States, we celebrated our Thanksgiving holiday yesterday. Today's kind of a quiet day, but Saturday and Sunday, the airports will be jammed again. And the passengers who fly on the Airbus 320 families with the software updates, the only way they can fly, should take a good nap and enjoy the safety of the aircraft.
Thank you for your assurances there, Richard Levy. Thank you, aviation expert.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Let's speak to John Strickland now, airline industry analyst. Good evening to you. Thank you for speaking to us. Your thoughts on what has occurred this evening in terms of the A320 being grounded pending this software update?
Well, I think as we're hearing, we're not likely to see the entire fleet grounded. It's a piece of news which, of course, has only broken in the last few hours. It relates to the incident that your previous guest was just talking about with a JetBlue aircraft a couple of weeks ago. We're hearing different responses from different airlines, but one positive thing is this is about software. Software can normally be uploaded much more quickly than physically taking a part off the plane, but it very much will depend on what the individual part numbers are. Each part on every aircraft is individually labelled with its own identity, and that will have an influence on how many of these need to be reloaded in terms of software, or whether they're capable to be reloaded or need to be taken off and swapped with another component. But as I said, we're hearing different messages from airlines about the potential amount of impact, but speed of rectification sounds to be pretty quick. Just as your guest was saying there about the quiet day of Thanksgiving in the US, we're at least entering the European weekend, and certainly in the European arena where there are numerous airlines flying Airbus A320 family aircraft. Saturday is one of the quietest days, running into a bit of Sunday. So in many respects, it gives a bit more room for manoeuvre, a bit more breathing space for airlines to put this right, to make these modifications on affected aircraft and get back into full service, I would hope, quite quickly.
We heard from American Airlines that they're predicting potentially a couple of hours for each aircraft to have this software updated or changed, maybe entirely. A couple of hours from them, but you're suggesting that perhaps other airlines might have a different time requirement.
No, not necessarily. I mean, it depends on the part. It's an individual part on the aircraft, which should be able to upload software. But what engineering specialists have told me is that the ability of each of those parts on every aircraft may vary. So some can be probably uploaded quite quickly. Some, depending on maybe how long they've been fitted for and what their particular status is, may actually need to be, the part itself may need to be taken off and swapped with another. So that depends on the individual aircraft in question.
How unusual is this in your estimation? Can you think of anything comparable, any other example where this particular type of incident has occurred?
I haven't heard of anything of this kind before. There is a recognition that solar flare activity from the sun can have an effect on aircraft from time to time, potentially in aspects of navigation. I haven't heard of something where it caused the aircraft to make an uncommanded descent in the way that this did. But I think we have to also put this in context to the fact this type of aircraft, the Airbus A320 family, has been in safe airline service for decades now. We're talking about from the late 1980s, early versions of this plane. Now, of course, we're talking about much newer versions, but the family has been in service all that time with a good safety record. And I can't think of an incident of this kind, either for Airbus or indeed any other type of aircraft made by any other manufacturer, for example, such as Boeing, where this has happened.
Would you therefore understand how it might be quite worrying for passengers when they know that an aircraft has made an uncommanded descent and there's been an emergency landing and also 15 people have been injured? Can you understand how they might be nervous to fly on an A320 or from the A320 family?
Of course. I mean, I've flown on one of these aircraft just a week ago. Obviously, before hearing about this incident, it had already happened prior to my last flight. Once I know that the work has been done, which has now been talked about to rectify the problem that this caused, I would be confident to get on an Airbus aircraft again. Of course, there's nervousness. Some passengers are, by nature, nervous flyers. Anyway, all of us can be unsettled if we could get a few bumps and lumps of turbulence. And we've seen people injured before simply because of turbulence. Even in the last year, there's been a couple of significant incidents. But we've got to put in context the safety record of air transport compared to any other means of travel. And the millions of flights that are operated safely each year. And the focus of the industry above anything else is always safety. It has to be on a pinnacle. And that's why flights, if necessary, will be delayed or cancelled. Aircraft will be withdrawn from service if airlines think there is any risk to safety of customers and indeed their own staff operating those flights.
Can you put the safety record into context for those watching who might be even more nervous than previously?
Well, air transport, as I've said, is safer than any other form of transport. I haven't got the actual figures on the tip of my tongue, but the number of fatalities in any given year is normally maybe running into hundreds of passengers at the most globally in incidents. So some years it's maybe only down at levels of perhaps double figures. Of course, one incident can change that statistically, but we're talking again about millions of passengers and millions of flights every year. So the ratios are really incredibly small, and that's because of deliberate focus on safety and by all players in the industry.
Yes, the Civil Aviation Authority keen to stress that this is a precautionary action, that this reprogramming or changing of the software is precautionary.
Exactly, and we've seen other situations, even in recent years, where there has been a level of accountability that has come down to human aspects, manufacture of aircraft. Boeing has gone through a difficult period with accidents that came actually from issues in terms of production and quality with aircraft that it produced in the Boeing 737 MAX family. And that led to an enormous clampdown by safety authorities and renewed efforts. There had to be groundings there because there had been accidents that had been caused, as I said, by mechanical human factors. This is, it seems like an aberration, but there is always the focus on taking precautionary action quickly if there's felt to be an unnecessary risk to any of us as travellers.
John Strickland, airline industry analyst, thank you very much for speaking to us. Well, if you're just joining us, the breaking news tonight is that airlines around the world are warning of delays and cancellations because of a software issue affecting thousands of Airbus planes. The manufacturer says solar radiation may corrupt data critical to the functioning of flight controls on the A320 family of aircraft, and affected planes will need to be updated. Well, let's bring in our correspondent Emma Birchley. And Emma, I'm just reading that Heathrow Airport saying that they're currently not expecting any disruption to their services, and Gatwick may have some minor scheduling changes.
Yes, the phrase used is it's impacting a small number of airlines at Gatwick. To give a picture of what's happening across the UK, we know that Wizz Air has some flights that they expect to be disrupted over the weekend. The same too with Aer Lingus. They're talking about a limited number. and immediate steps being taken to sort the problem. EasyJet too, some disruption. They say they'll be informing customers directly and will be doing all they can to minimise any impact. And as for British Airways, they only actually have 3 of these A320 family aircraft, and all the problem will be sorted overnight. We're talking about a software update that's required to around 6,500 of these aircraft across the world. This very much a precautionary action, we're told. It's believed to relate to a JetBlue flight from Cancun in Mexico to Newark in New Jersey on October the 30th. It was diverted, landing at Tampa in Florida after a sharp loss of altitude where several people were hurt. Now, what followed was immediate analysis of what went wrong, and that analysis revealed that intense solar radiation may corrupt data critical to the functioning of flight controls. And of course, when it comes to aircraft, no one wants to take any chances, although Simon Calder, the travel expert, has made it quite clear that this is really a measure that's an abundance of caution with this software update, which usually takes 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours per aircraft, unless hardware changes are needed as well. If that's the case, it can take longer. So I've given you a picture of what's happening across the UK, but this is a global issue. Colombian Airline, Avianca have actually closed ticket sales for 10 days. We know Air India is warning of delays. And American Airlines has 480 of these aircraft. And I think to give you an idea of what percentage are being affected, 340 of those 480 need to have this software update done. Most of those will happen today and tomorrow, and they're trying to avoid cancellations. But certainly in the States, the timing's not great because it has been Thanksgiving, plenty of families moving around the country, and the timing not ideal.
Emma, thank you very much for that update. And just to say, British Airways are saying that 3 of their short-haul A320 aircraft are impacted, but don't expect any operational impact. That's their line that's just coming into us. Well, let's speak to the travel journalist, Simon Calder, once again. So, Simon, British Airways saying that there will be no operational impact, even though 3 of their short-haul A320 aircraft are impacted.
Yeah, exactly. And British Airways has many, many Airbus A320s, and it just shows you how variable these things are. So Avianca of Colombia, who we were just hearing, has warned that it's going to stop selling tickets for the next week or two, because they are concerned about this affecting 70% of their entire fleet. I've actually had a quick look. They've cancelled so far, Friday afternoon and evening, a dozen flights to and from its hub in Bogota in Colombia. But actually switching across to Europe, I've had a look at what's happening at Paris Charles de Gaulle. Clearly a huge airport, second only to London Heathrow in terms of the number of flights. And it appears, and I haven't been able to verify this with Air France yet, but it very much appears as though they have cancelled 20 departures and 20 arrivals, so 40 flights altogether, using Airbus A320 family aircraft to a whole range of destinations, lots of domestic flights to places like Marseille, Lyon, Montpellier, but also some quite long international flights to Yerevan, to Istanbul, a couple to Casablanca, and also British passengers affected because morning flight to and from Birmingham has been grounded. And from what I can infer from the flight schedules, they are basically saying, OK, we're going to cancel these 40 flights in total in order to give us the space to be able to work through our fleet. And I think that might be the sort of thing that we see happening over the weekend. Bear in mind that the timing for Europe was pretty tough. I mean, the first news emerged around about tea time, just as everybody was winding down for the weekend, and suddenly they have to work out, right, what are we going to do? How are we going to staff it? What effect is this going to have on our schedules? And what passengers are sadly going to find that they are disrupted? But at the moment, British Airways, as you say, not affected. Wizz Air and EasyJet warning that there will be some disruption, but let's hope that they're able to work through the night, get their aircraft ready, and that not too many people are affected tomorrow.
Simon, it looks like it will predominantly affect American Airlines because they've got 480 within the Airbus A320 family.
Yeah, American Airlines, a huge operator of the Airbus A320 family. But EasyJet, forgive me, have over 350 Airbus A320 family aircraft. It's the only type that they operate, and therefore I think they will all be going through seeing what specific aircraft are affected by this airworthiness directive, because it certainly isn't all of them, and then just making sure that they are able to tackle the problem. The issue that I think may come to cause problems perhaps in the build up to Christmas is that the issue that a minority of these aircraft may actually need some new equipment installed. That would be a real headache. First of all, sourcing the equipment. Secondly, taking the aircraft out of the flying program to get it installed. Now, I simply don't know at this stage if that is happening, and I'm sweeping around the world looking at the different airports around the world, and so far the impact is limited. But we are talking here, just 5 or so hours after this suddenly emerged in the form of a statement from Airbus. And so the airline duty offices are going to be extremely busy tonight, figuring out exactly what they're going to do and how they're going to do it.
Simon, just how unusual is this sort of situation in your experience?
We have had the grounding of the Boeing 737 MAX after 2 fatal accidents, and that really was very, very extreme circumstances. The first one was an Indonesian airline, Lion Air, that crashed, and very sadly, everyone on board was killed. It was investigated, of course, as all aviation accidents are, when subsequently there was another crash following a similar pattern with Ethiopian Airlines, then within days, the entire world's supply of Boeing 737 MAX aircraft were grounded. That was very extreme. In this particular case, I mean, I've not stayed up late on a Friday night to have to report on sudden changes that airlines have to make, because normally if a problem is identified and it's regarded as relatively minor, then they will be given time to put that into practice. However, clearly, the investigators into that incident we've been hearing about on the 30th of October, a JetBlue Airbus A320 flying from Mexico to New York, they investigated that, figured out what the problem was, figured out what you had to do about it, and immediately alerted all the airlines around the world. Slightly easier, I think, for the US, because while it's Thanksgiving weekend, this broke basically Friday morning their time, so they can have a good old look at it on a day which isn't normally very busy, hoping to get everything ready by Sunday, which is always extremely busy the Sunday of after Thanksgiving.
We must reiterate that it's only affecting some of global Airbus A320 aircraft and not all of them. But what is the specific safety record for the Airbus A320?
It's very, very good. I mean, they've had nothing but great success over the aircraft, as anything, which is it's by far the most popular short-haul aircraft in the world. It's overtaken the Boeing 737 in terms of the number of sales, and as a result of that, they are basically having to. It's always been. Excuse me, I'm sorry about this. Yeah, so it has a good safety record. They have been, of course, getting safer and safer, as aviation has in general. I mean, the safety standards of this decade are higher than they have ever been, and the same goes for the last decade as well. Every aviation incident like the one involving an Airbus A380 has been investigated, and as a result of that, the aviation gets safer and safer. Generally, I do things such as ride a bicycle around London. That's a really dangerous thing to do compared with getting on a plane. So when I get on board a plane, Airbus or Boeing, I know that I'm in extremely good hands.
Finally, Simon, your advice to those who might be affected by the disruption, what should they do? Can they claim for any missed flights? What should be done?
Okay, so if, for example, let's take the example of the Birmingham to Paris flight tomorrow. Now, that's going to mess up the plans for a lot of people, not just going to the French capital for the weekend, but more likely connecting at Paris Charles de Gaulle to a lot of airlines, a lot of international flights. So Air France has the obligation to get those people to their destination as soon as possible using whatever flights are available. Might be that some people who've got a particularly difficult routing, they might actually be told, right, we'll go from Birmingham down to Heathrow and get a direct flight from there. It all depends on the circumstances, but European air passenger rights rules kick in, and that means that you are able to get an alternative flight if your flight is cancelled, or, and I think this is more likely, if your flight is seriously delayed.
Thank you very much for that.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.